This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
All right. Chapter 30. Dae'mar. And her symbol is the rising sun of Cairhien. In the room shared by Hurin and Loyal, Rand peered through the window at the ordered tiles and terraces of Cairhien, the stone buildings and slate roofs. He could not see the Illuminator's chapter house. Even if huge towers and great lords' houses had not been in the way, the city walls would have prevented it. The Illuminators were on everyone's tongues in the city, even now, days after the night when they had lofted only one night flower into the sky, and that early. A dozen different versions of the scandal were being told, discounting minor variations, but none close to the truth.
Now, I do remember last week, or last time we were interacting with Rand, Discord was trying to figure out, even though only one night flower went up into the air, wouldn't a massive explosion also have been evident from the city? Especially if more fireworks were going off at the ground level.
You would think the sound would have been heard, but I suppose no one would really know exactly what happened.
That's what I would thought, is that the booming echo would, they'd be like, oh, the one sky flower, and then the big explosion that we all heard.
Yeah. I will take the next watch, he told Hurin, as soon as I come back. There's no need, my lord. Hurin bowed as deeply as any Cairhienan. I can keep watch, truly, my lord.
That Cairhien formality is infecting Hurin.
The sniffer was more formal every day they remained in Cairhien. There's a back and forth with Hurin and Rand, where Rand is about to shake him by the shirt. And
Rand's just really frustrated that he wants Hurin to be his friend, and Hurin's treating him like a superior.
We're just people. Can we just be people?
Right.
And Hurin is not having it.
No.
A knock on the connecting door to Rand's room froze them all, but Rand was pleased to see that Hurin did not wait to ask permission before picking up his sword. Skipping a bit. The innkeeper stood there, rocking with eagerness and pushing his tray at Rand. 2 sealed parchments lay on the tray. Forgive me, my lord, Quayle said breathlessly. I could not wait until you came down, and then you were not in your own room, and forgive me, but he jiggled the tray. Rand snatched the invitations. There had been so many. And he tells Quayle to, thanks, get out of here.
Yeah, whatever. Just more invitations. Not a big deal.
And Quayle's shaking.
He's
saying,
quailing.
Yeah. But my lord, these are from... Thank you. Rand pushed the man into the hall and pulled the door shut firmly. He hasn't done that before, Loyal. Do you think he was listening at the door before he knocked? You were starting to think like these Cairhienan, the Ogier laughed.
And I don't think there was anything important they were saying.
Nah, I don't think so.
I went back and reread all the dialogue, and they were just talking about the game of houses and nothing really important.
My lord? Hurin had picked up the sealed parchments and was gazing wide-eyed at the seals. My lord, these are from Lord Barthanes, high seat of House Demodred, and from, his voice dropped with awe, the king. Rand waved them away. They still go in the fire like the rest, unopened. But my lord!
Wait.
Rand just gives no shits. He's like, this is a dumb game and I'm not playing it. But he is playing it. He just doesn't know.
I have a couple of corrections I wanted to bring up.
Sure.
First of all, I think I remember saying that, he didn't burn any after the first 2. I was wrong. He burns them all.
Yeah.
Except for these. And second of all, I think you said... You were trying to figure out what house the king was in, and you said, isn't it...
I think I suggested Riotin.
Riotin. And I was like, no, it's Barthanes. You were right. It was Riotin.
Barthanes Demodred? Barthanes of House Demodred, is that right?
Yeah.
And Galdrian Riotin.
Of House Riotin. I thought Galdrian was his last name, but Galdrian of House Riotin.
Gotcha.
So, my bad. So just 2 things that I think you had right and I had wrong.
Oh. Well. And I believe, I'll ask this to Discord, is Barthanes Moraine's uncle? Was that right?
Yes.
Thank you, Aradia. And everyone. They still go in the fire, like the rest.
That's not going to do you any good. So basically, he's come to the end of the chain, where if he burns these two, the king and the high noble are just going to have him assassinated.
It's a little bit of an explanation from Hurin here. My lord, burn these, and you make enemies as powerful as you can find. Burning them has worked so far because the other houses are all waiting to see what you're up to, and thinking you must have powerful allies to risk insulting them. But Lord Barthanes and the king insult them, and they'll act for sure.
But he can't accept both because they're bitter enemies.
Right.
So basically, he's in the situation where once he burned the first two letters, everyone assumes that he has to have protection, or else he wouldn't have done it.
Right.
And if he burns all of the letters, well, then he doesn't have any protection. Then he obviously has no protection. And they're coming after him. If he declines both, he has no protection. If he accepts both, he's pissing off two rival houses. And so basically he has to accept one or the other. He's clueless. He's taverning himself into this just crazy situation.
The one was sealed, not with the tree and crown of House de Madrid, but with Barthane's charging boar. The other bore Galdrian's stag, personal seals. Apparently, he had managed to rouse interest in the highest quarters by doing nothing at all. These people are crazy, he said, trying to think of a way out of this. Yes, my lord. Hurin being formal.
Yes, they are crazy. And then Rand comes up with actually a pretty decent idea here, which is... Stall. Show that he hasn't opened them yet. He hasn't destroyed them yet. He's just thinking about what he's going to do.
Yeah, this was actually pretty clever.
And this, of course, comes into handy because eventually they need one of those two, because they're going to end up going to...
Barthanes?
Yeah, they're going to end up going to his party.
Guessing out that pronunciation, by the way, guys. That's another one that's
Barthanes.
Headcanon for me. It's not Barthane or anything, is it?
Barthanes.
Barthanes? Yep, that's been confirmed. Barthanes. As long as they are waiting to see which way I jump, maybe I can earn a few more days. Ingtar has to come soon. He has to. Now that is thinking like a Kyrianan, my lord, Hurin said, grinning. Rand gave him a sour look, then stuffed the parchments into his pocket, on top of Celine's letters.
And they do show up pretty soon.
Yeah. Quill was polishing a silver tray. Oh, he decides to take them down to the common room so everyone knows what happened to the letters, or that nothing has happened so far.
He's just sort of like flashing them and being like, here's my shit. Because they all saw the letters come in, and I'm sure...
Everyone knows.
Everyone knows, like, oh, he got letters from the king and Lord Damandred.
Every last person at the table stared into his or her own mug, as if the secrets of power lay in the wine or ale. Not one of them said a word. After a moment.
That makes it so obvious. They're all just like listening and watching as hard as they can.
What was that phrase from the chapter we just released? It was,
I have no idea.
I forgot, but Rand's comments on how everybody's like flamboyantly
forget what when he first walks into Kyrian, everyone's like purposely ignoring each other as best they can.
Yeah. After a moment, he pulled the two invitations from his pocket and studied the seals, then stuck them back. Quill gave a little jump as Rand started up for the door. Before it closed behind him, he heard conversation spring up again.
So basically, as soon as he moves, they start talking about it.
Yeah.
So they're thinking about trying to get out of the city, and they're saying Fane's in the foregate, and it doesn't really matter how many Trollocs he has. He's got enough.
Yeah. Rand points that out. If he only has 10, like, what are we going to do against that? After Loyal says, if we leave the city through a gate, Fane will attack us. If we leave the city, and we're not allowed to leave the city through the docks. So there's no way out, essentially, unless... Oh, and they also can't... they'll certainly attack a merchant train as well.
Yeah, and there are two docks, right? There's docks in the foregate, and then there are sort of docks in the old town. The foregate docks are obviously going to be watched by Fane and his dark friends. And then it's the old town docks that he's not allowed to use. They're for grain and nobles only. Later on, isn't Rand attacked because a bunch of Trollocs pull up to the grain docks?
That's in Tyr.
That's in Tyr? Okay.
Thank you, Discord.
I love it when three people correct this almost simultaneously.
Yeah.
Whoa. We got that one wrong.
So Rand goes to one of the gates to ask if any of the people he's waiting for have entered the city. Rand went straight to the long table in the back of the room. There was only one man seated behind it, not a soldier, with one green bar across his coat. A plump fellow whose skin looked too tight. He adjusted documents on the table and shifted the position of his inkwell twice before looking up at Rand and Loyal with a false smile. "How may I help you, my lord?" "The same way I hoped you could help me yesterday," Rand said with more patience than he felt, "and the day before, and the day before that. Has Lord Ingtar come?" "Lord Ingtar, my lord?" Rand took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Lord Ingtar of House Shinoa, from Shinar, the same man I have asked after every day since I've come here." "No one of that name has entered the city, my lord." "Are you certain? Don't you need to look at your lists, at least?" "My lord, the lists of foreigners who come to Cairhien are exchanged among the guard houses at sunrise and sunset. I examine them as soon as they come before me. No Shinaran lord has entered Cairhien in some time. And the Lady Selene, before you ask again, I do not know her house, but I've given you her name, and I have described her to you 3 times. Isn't that enough?"
I wonder which bureaucrat Robert Jordan was really pissed at when he wrote this scene.
That's why I read that whole thing. I think it's a really funny scene. And I sort of imagine that you're supposed to be friends with these guys or pay them.
I don't. This dude's just sleazy. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Purposely not being helpful.
Yeah. I think he's just passing on that information. I think he's like in the employ of, I'm guessing, Barthanas, but it could be anyone.
Yeah.
And like he doesn't need to do his job. He just needs to pass on the information. Now, on his way to meet this guy, there was one passage. Rand thought a man, dressed in what had once been good Shinaran clothes, ducked back into the crowd at the sight of him. But he could not be sure.
I noticed that.
Man in Shinaran clothes, old ratty ones.
So one of the Dark Friends?
Gotta be one of Fane's Dark Friends. Because
I'm nodding.
Rand's gone. It's time to sneak in to the inn and steal the horn.
And burn the place down.
Yeah. So that guy seeing Rand is what results in the inn burning down later in the chapter.
So probably this bureaucrat's being paid, or he's not helping for some reason.
Yeah, I think he's just like just a pain in the ass bureaucrat. He's like one of those evil characters that's not actually evil, just like fucking annoying. He's like an Elida level character. Like he's just awful. He's not bad. He's not evil. He's just awful.
Yeah. And then a movement at one of the doors behind the desk caught Rand's eye. A man starting to step into the anteroom. Then turning away hurriedly. "Perhaps Captain Keldevlin can help me," Rand told the clerk. "Captain Keldevlin, my lord? I just saw him behind you." "I'm sorry, my lord. If there was a Captain Keldevlin in the guardhouse, I would know." Rand stared at him until Loyal touched his shoulder. "Rand, I think we might as well go." "Thank you for your help," Rand said in a tight voice. "I will return tomorrow." "It is my pleasure to do what I may," the man said with a false smile.
So we know that Keldevlin he's in the employ of the king because he's overseeing the excavation of the Choden Call statue.
Yes.
And he says it's one of the king's projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to assume that this bureaucrat who's covering up for Devlin is in the employee of the king and is probably passing information directly to the king.
Yeah. I noticed Rand has a thought as he's leaving. He kind of wants to blame Moraine again about the coat and everyone thinking that he's a lord. Almost immediately, though, if reluctantly, he admitted that she could hardly be blamed for this. There had always been some reason to pretend to be what he was not. First keeping her in spirits up, then trying to impress Selene. After Selene, there had not seemed to be any way out of it.
I think in the last chapter I was saying that, like, Rand could have traded this coat for a couple of cheaper coats.
Yeah. But he doesn't.
He doesn't. He always finds reasons to stick with it. And so there's a little bit of Moraine manipulation, but it's also just him, like, doing his thing.
Once he's in, he just keeps getting deeper, and he can't really get out of whatever position he's in.
Right.
It does seem like a nice coat.
It is a very nice coat.
Next thing I have is Rand, Loyal said. There's a fire up ahead. As they're walking back through the city, and it's, of course, the Defender of the Dragon Wall, the inn that they had been staying in. Smoke pouring out of its upper windows and flames breaking through the roof. A crowd had gathered in front of the inn.
Rand looks for Huron. He's not around, and the innkeeper's like, oh, he must have gone out.
Huron wouldn't have gone out, Loyal said. He would not have left the... And he's referring to, of course, the chest with the horn and the dagger. Right. I know, Rand said, and plunged into the inn. Loyal insists on going with him, because there's no way he could carry out Huron and the chest.
Right.
So they run through, see that Huron's been knocked out. Rand says there's a lump on his head the size of a plum, so somebody hit him really hard, knocked him out, stole the chest, set everything on fire.
I assume it was just Dark Friends.
I assume so.
I don't think any Trollocs got in. I don't think it was Fane himself. I think it was just that ratty guy that saw Rand earlier, maybe grabbed a few. It might just be him, but I'm guessing it's a few of his buddies because they had to grab the chest and light the place on fire.
Probably. And they never get any of the Dark Friends. They never have a direct confrontation with like the ones that were holding the posts for the Trolloc. Wasn't there like 4 or 5 of them that all run away?
They all run. Well, and there's a bunch of groups of those.
Yeah, so there's quite a few of Fane's Dark Friends, and I'm sure there's others around as well.
Now, I was definitely seeing speculation that perhaps Selene sent some of those Trollocs, but I don't think she did.
I don't think so either. Yeah. I think at this point, Lanfear is all about co-opting the Dragon Reborn. She wants to seduce him, befriend him, whatever, and so that she can have her Leuther and Telamon back, and they can rule the world forever and ever together in terror and harmony.
So they show up, the chest is gone, and Loyal basically says, let me grab Huron, because you can't carry him and stand up. If you stand up, you'll choke to death on the smoke.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to crawl and carry him on my back because I'm big enough. So, and the books are just going to have to burn. Which, by the way, nothing is more valuable to Loyal than his books, and he gladly gives them up to save his friend's life.
Yeah.
Loyal's awesome.
Hashtag Loyal saves. That's hilarious. He does, though. And Rand's about to follow him, and he realizes the dragon banner is in the other room, and he goes and gets it, despite his own thoughts to the contrary.
Well, he gets the saddlebag and everything in it. Well, and that all goes back to Moraine telling him that his life may depend on it.
Right. Let it burn, he thought, and an answering thought came as if he had heard Moraine say it. Your life may depend on it. And Aes Sedai never lie. With a groan, he rolled across the floor and kicked open the door to his room. Grabs it.
Grabs the wooden flute case, too, that Tom gives him.
Mm-hmm. He grabbed saddlebags and flute case and threw himself back through the door, landing on his knees as burning timbers crashed where he had stood. Dragging his burden, he crawled into the hall. The floor shook with more falling beams. And they get out. Alive.
Barely.
I thought this line was kind of funny. When he gets out, Rand says, "Is there a wisdom nearby?" Rand demanded. "He needs help." The woman looked at him blankly. And he tried to remember the other names he had heard people call the women, who would be wisdoms in the Two Rivers. A wise woman. A woman you call Mother Somebody. A woman who knows herbs and healings. "I'm a reader, if that's what you mean," the woman said. "But all I know to do for this one is to make him comfortable. Something is broken inside his head, I fear."
I'm a reader, too. I like to read books. But yeah, I mean, that was super close. Like, if he'd gotten crushed by the beams, he would have died. If he hadn't got the banner, he would have died. You know, that was a tough moment for Rand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Huron here is pretty fucked. It's a good thing Varen walks up.
He got hit hard in the head.
Yeah, he's got a cracked skull.
"Rand, it is you." Rand stared. It was Matt, leading his horse through the crowd, with his bow strung across his back. A Matt whose face was pale and drawn, but still Matt, and grinning, if weakly. And behind him came Perrin, his yellow eyes shining in the fire, and earning as many looks as the blaze, and Ingtar, dismounting in his high-collared coat instead of armor, but still with his sword hilt sticking up above his shoulder. Rand felt a shiver run through him. "It's too late," he told them. "You came too late." And he sat down in the street and began to laugh.
So this is finally the
Minutes.
reunification of our group. I bet they wouldn't have found him so quickly if it weren't for the big fire.
Rand does leave a lot of inns burning behind him.
That's true. And I also think we were speculating how Ingtar will never be able to, just the way the pattern is, will never actually get the horn because he's thinking of glory.
I like that
And that
idea.
it had to disappear before he could show up.
Yeah.
It's a little on the edge, but I kind of like it.
I mean, I almost wish, because he's a dark friend, I almost wish that I could blame it on him, but it's not. There's no way it could have been him. It's Fane.
Blame dark friends. But yeah, we got the three boys back together again.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen very often after this.
Just too late by minutes.
Yep. Varen shows up.
Yeah, we see her in the next line the first line of the next chapter.
And she heals Rand, which sort of stops him with that insane laughter. I assume he's in a bit of shock
Oh, yeah.
right now. Because he's basically, he's lost something. He's probably got some smoke inhalation going on.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing too good.
Chapter 31. On the Scent, and our symbol is the rising sun of Cairhien, once again.
Since we've been in Cairhien, we've had that chapter header quite a bit in this one.
Yeah. Rand did not know Varen was there until the Aes Sedai took his face in her hands. For a moment, he could see worry in her face, perhaps even fear, and then suddenly, he felt as if he had been doused with cold water. Not the wet, but the tingle. He gave one abrupt shudder, and stopped laughing. She left him to crouch over Hurin. The reader watched her carefully. So did Rand. What is she doing here? As if I didn't know.
So that's Varen healing Rand from what I assume is mostly smoke inhalation.
Yeah.
I thought perhaps some of his hysteria here might just be like oxygen deprivation or carbon dioxide inhalation. Carbon monoxide.
A couple of intense minutes there at the end of the last chapter. You rushed into a burning building and all that.
The smokiness and the shock and everything, I'm sure, just had him a little out of it. Varen heals him, and then she goes over to Hurin to heal him because Hurin has a cracked skull.
Yeah. Matt's wondering where they went. Rand gets to that in a little bit.
Because he's just like, well, how did you guys basically teleport across a bunch of leagues and get here days before we did?
Yeah.
You vanished in the middle of the night. There was no footprints. Like, it's just been this big mystery they've been living with for days. And Matt's the first thing he wants to know is, how the hell did you do that?
Pretty mysterious. But Rand just says, how did you find the inn? Her? Kind of indicating Varen.
Right. Well, and I was thinking that they found him quickly because it was the fire, and they came right to the fire. But apparently Varen's saying she actually convinced the bureaucrat
Somehow.
to tell her where Rand was.
In a way, Perrin said, the guards at the gate wanted our names, and a fellow coming out of the guardhouse gave a jump when he heard Ingtar's name. He said he didn't know it, but he had a smile that shouted, lie, a mile off. Varen shows the guy her ring. I couldn't hear what she said, Perrin says to Rand, but I didn't know whether his eyes were going to pop out of his head or he was going to swallow his tongue first. All of a sudden, he couldn't do enough for us.
I always enjoy imagining the things that Varen would say to him to get him.
Yeah, it could have been any number of things, but I feel like all she would really have to do is say, my name is Varen Sedai.
I bet she threatens him a little bit. I could turn you into a, toad and curl your fingernails in on themselves until she wouldn't be lying to say I could do these things.
Or say, the Emerald would be displeased if she knew.
Right. Or perhaps, I'll go right to the king with your name and that'll be the end of you.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's all sorts of things she could have said, whether it was from her position as an Aes Sedai or politically or simply just crazy Varen stuff.
I'm the same rank as your boss.
Right. She ranks above him. What is it? King's bow to Aes Sedai?
Is it Matt that snorts and says, Lord Rand of House Althor?
Yeah.
Been to your house. It's 3 rooms.
And one of them's for the sheep.
Yeah.
Rand admits to Matt that he had the dagger and he lost it. One of the things is they're standing in the middle of a crowd right outside the inn because they're all watching the inn burn down and everybody's listening to every word they say. So when Rand mentions the Dark Friends, the whole crowd hears him and is like, oh my God. So just letting the caution go to the wind. Fortunately, they don't mention the horn, at least.
Spreading rumors through the streets.
Right.
Yeah, Ingtar has the wherewithal to say, you had it, and the other thing, they took that back too, Rand said quietly. But Matt's not too worried about it, especially now that they have 2 sniffers.
Yeah, that's sort of a weird,
Saying that with a bit of a wink.
Yeah. Well, and Rand doesn't really know what Perrin's ability is, so he's sort of like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, well, I guess Ingtar does. Does anyone else? I think only Ingtar knows. Varen knows. And Egwene.
Mm-hmm.
Moraine, but none of those people are there.
And Varen, I don't think he was told. I think she just knows. She figures it out. Yeah.
Oh, you have a new sniffer. How providential. I've been thinking about that line a lot for some reason.
With golden eyes. And she's been around long enough to have heard about Elias.
Yeah. Varen knows.
So Perrin mutters, Shadow Killer?
Rand thinks he heard him wrong. I'm not mad. Not yet.
Keep telling yourself that.
Hurin has been healed also, and Varen tells him that he'll be tired for a while.
She does pretty good for a cracked skull.
Yeah. I guess that tells us something about Varen's ability for healing.
And Hurin's constitution.
Yeah. Maybe he's just a tough guy.
I have no doubt he's a tough guy. I mean, he's a Shanaran, which we know is a group of pretty tough dudes.
Yeah, and a thief catcher.
Yeah, and he'd never complain. And honestly, he's been resting for a couple of days in an inn.
Yeah.
He's probably pretty well rested.
They've caused a bit of a scene outside of the burning inn, which is impressive to cause a scene next to a burning inn.
So much so that the owner of the burning inn stops paying attention to his own inn burning.
Do you have rooms yet? He asked. We need to talk, and we can't do it here. A good idea, Varen said. I have stayed here before, at the Great Tree. We will go there.
The Great Tree, a reference to, of course, the cutting of a Vendosora that was in Cairhien.
I'm going to embarrass myself, but I think it's a Vendaladora. It had its own name.
It did have its own name. And rather than embarrassing myself, I'm going to say that was a nice attempt. Aradia has us at Avendadoral Dara.
Okay. Avendadoral Dara is correct.
Anyone know what Dara means in the Old Tongue?
Oh, derived from, Samuel says, is what the Dara suffix or word means. So
it means what?
Derived from. So it may be the old tongue for a cutting of the tree.
It just means a cutting of the
or something like that.
Tree of life. That makes a lot of sense. Jordan wasn't really subtle with his Old Tongue. It usually means exactly what you think it means.
Yeah, it's generally pretty straight up.
Yeah.
And there's not a ton of Old Tongue in there's a good amount of it, but it's not like Elvish or something where it's like a fully fleshed out language.
But there is a good amount of vocabulary that you can pull from.
Yeah.
I find it's not that hard to come up with, basically toddler
sentences.
words to make complete sentences. And it's fun. That's how I pick all my character names in fantasy games and stuff like that. I just put together.
Oh, that's smart.
I describe them as something, and then I replace all the words with the closest Old Tongue word I can come up with. Throw a couple apostrophes in there, and you've got yourself a pretty cool fantasy name.
Hurin, Rand said. How soon can you be ready to follow their trail again? Can you follow it? I can follow it now, my lord. And I could smell them in the street. It won't last long, though. There weren't any Trollocs. And they didn't kill anybody. Just men, my lord. Dark friends, I suppose. But you can't always be sure of that by smell. A day, maybe, before it fades.
And so we get a couple of pieces of information there that, A, there were no Trollocs that got into the inn. It was just Dark friends. Fane definitely wasn't with them.
And the only damage they really did was knocking Hurin upside the head.
And burning the inn down.
Yeah.
So here's the question. If Hurin had died from that blow, well, obviously he wouldn't have been able to smell it. But let's say there were two sniffers, and Huron dies from that blow. Does it stink more than if Varen doesn't show up and heal him? Because then it would be murder.
No, I think because they leave the trail, because Huron says he can smell him, so it smelled where they went. And he's healed now. Or would it reduce?
Yeah, would it reduce the trail? Would it go from a murder just to violence because he survived? Or would it, like, the stink get suddenly worse if he had died from his injuries?
I'm going to say that when you do the violence, it sticks to you. Whatever happens after that, just because Huron got better wouldn't mean
right
that they hadn't done the violence. But I'm just guessing.
That's how I would picture it, too, is that the violence done is the blow.
Yeah.
And whether he dies or not really has no relevance.
Loyal points out that he doesn't believe that they're able to open the chest, the Fane and the Dark Friends.
No, or else they wouldn't have carried it off because it's heavy as hell.
And we know that he's right. They're not able to open the chest.
No, it's one of Fane's big frustrations until he gives it. That's why he can't get the dagger back.
So we also know that the Dark Friends must have probably had 2 men pick up the chest and put it on the back of a horse. Rand nodded. They must have put it in a cart or on a horse. Once they get it beyond the foregate, they'll join the Trollocs again, for sure. You'll be able to follow that trail, Huron. I will, my lord. Then you rest until you're fit, Rand told him. The sniffer looked steadier, but he rode slumped and his face was weary. At best, they'll be only a few hours ahead of us, if we ride hard. Suddenly, he noticed that the others were looking at him. Varen and Ingtar, Mat and Perrin. He realized what he had been doing, and his face colored. I'm sorry, Ingtar. It's just that I've become used to being in charge, I suppose. I'm not trying to take your place. Ingtar nodded slowly. Moraine chose well when she made Lord Agelmar name you my second. And he also says, at least you have actually managed to touch the horn.
Yeah, Rand just taking charge without even thinking about it.
Yeah, and I thought that kind of fit really well here. And just to point out that he's coming into his leadership role in the same way Perrin's accepting his gift. Or his talent, I should say.
But they are making some incorrect assumptions about where Fane is heading. Because they think he's going to head out of the city to the foregate, which is sort of the outer city, and
to
then
the
flee.
North.
Yeah, but he's actually going to head to Lord Barthanas' place and the Waygate that's in there. And he's using the Waygate to head to Toman Head. So he never exits the city. He's actually going into the city to find the Waygate.
Deeper into the city to hide in Barthanas' manor.
Yeah, because Barthanas' manor was built on the old Ogier Grove, and so he's got a Waygate in his basement.
I'm sure that pisses Loyal off.
Oh, yeah.
Just a house on top of a...
He mutters about it when they go to the party.
Same as in Camelin, I guess.
Whenever he sees men building over what used to be groves, it really... Do we ever see is there a single grove left?
Is Tarvalon's grove maintained? That's a great question. Radia says in Tyr it's just overgrown, so it's still a forest, but it's not...
Yeah, it's just a forest.
It's not which I think is...
the Ogier Garden anymore.
Like a maintained, extra pretty forest. It's a planned forest.
It's like a hunting forest, like a Lord's Manor's forest,
yeah.
Where they like hunt rabbits and deer.
Oh, is that what it has become?
Yeah, that's what it's become. And in Cairhien, was the forest burned during the Aiel War, and then they built over it?
I'm pretty sure Barthanas' manor was only built in the last few years.
Right. But yeah, it looks like the forest was literally just torn down by Barthanas to build the palace.
Oh. Ooh.
I thought it would at least be a little forgivable if, like, it had burned down during the war and then, like, they'd gone ahead and used it recently. But if it was cut down just for the palace, that's pretty despicable.
Well, he is a despicable dark friend.
That's true.
By the way, dark friend alert.
Yes.
Barthanas.
Who Barthanas Demandred, a uncle to Moraine, is a dark friend. Anyone can be a dark friend.
Oh, we see that pointed out in a minute. Varen points it out sort of ironically. I don't know if that's real irony, but I wanted to point out that they get to their new inn that Varen has suggested, and they're all being taken care of by servants. And I just kind of wanted to point out where it popped into my head that they're all getting so used to this now. Remember in the Eye of the World when they're like weirded out by people cleaning their clothes for them and saddling their horses for them, and now it's just totally normal.
Getting the Lord's treatment.
Yeah. And that goes right along with kind of what I was saying before, where Rand's falling into his leadership role and starting to fit the clothing that Moraine made for him.
I notice we have a slightly plump innkeeper here. Looks like an old friend of Varen's. I wonder if she's one of her eyes and ears.
Probably.
That's what I would guess.
I don't have anything to back that up, but I suspect, especially if she wants to stay there and suggests it.
He implies that she knows that Varen is Aes Sedai, so
Yeah.
that usually to me implies eyes and ears. Not necessarily, but...
Friend of the Aes Sedai.
Yeah,
sort of.
someone who probably writes her letters on a regular basis.
Rand notes that Varen is one of the 3 Aes Sedai he knows won't gentle him, that know about him and who and what he is.
Well, and he says she's Moraine's eyes and ears. He thinks she's there at the behest of Moraine. Little does he know that Moraine has no idea she's even there.
Nobody knows where she is.
Nope. Varen's just off on her own, doing her own thing. He finally takes off the red coat because it's covered in ash and puts on the black coat, which also has herons on the arms, I notice.
And rushing water.
Yeah. I didn't make any connection with the rushing water, but...
Me neither.
I did notice that Moraine made sure he was marked twice with the heron on all of his jackets. And his 2 jackets, by the way, red and black. Definitely something we see happening, a trend happening later with him.
Twice and twice shall he be marked. She must have had that in mind. Why would she keep doing that?
Oh, maybe I think that's right. Tom noticed. Of course Tom noticed. Tom would notice. Because he was the one who was quoting the heron.
Oh, yeah. He counts the herons. And doesn't he doesn't point out the one that's burned into Rand's hand? I bet he noticed it, and he leaves it out.
Probably. Rand thinks he hides it, but the fact that hiding something from Tom, probably not. He probably notices.
Yeah, I would suspect.
So the next thing I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
He's pulling out the notes from his old coat, and he gets a hold of Celine's 2 notes that she left with him.
Right.
And we've been talking a little bit about this compulsion light that's been happening with Celine that sort of convinced Rand to fall in line and really be attracted to her. And I've noticed that tends to go along with the mention of her perfume.
I'm nodding.
That whenever he sort of gets stubborn and is refusing to do what she wants, he suddenly gets the smell of perfume in his nose, and he just sort of falls in line right after that.
And he even thinks about the smell now that she's not there.
Yeah, and I noticed Jordan brings it up twice. And whenever he talks about something twice in a very short period of time, I'm thinking he wants us to notice.
It almost seemed to him that she was in the room with him, that he could smell her perfume. So much so that he looked around and laughed to find himself alone. He thinks he's just having fancies. Abruptly, he tipped back the mantle of the lamp on the bedside table, lit it, and thrust the letters into the flame. Outside the inn, the wind picked up to a roar, leaking in through the shutters and fanning the flames to engulf the parchment. Hurriedly, he tossed the burning letters into the cold hearth just before the fire reached his fingers. He waited until the last blackened curl went out, before he buckled on his sword and left the room.
Yeah, that howling of the wind is definitely somehow a release of magical energy. Like, it's very cinematic, obvious, like
It could
something
be
is happening
symbolic
here.
too, because the wind is a theme through the whole series.
That's true.
The winds of time and the winds of change. But I would like
Made
to
the
think that
dragon once
something's...
again ride the winds of time.
Yeah, I would like to think that something is happening there, though.
I think that she's got some tied off weaves in those letters, and by burning them, he's releasing some energy by destroying those weaves.
I'm going to agree.
Oh, and before he burns them, there was another time where he said, yet he could still feel the pull of her just looking at her writing, could almost smell the perfume of her. So just looking at that writing seems to bring back that memory and that compulsion. And I think by burning the letters, he either is breaking that compulsion light, or maybe stopping her from tracking him as much.
Could be.
It could be that's how she keeps finding him, is that he just has that letter in his pocket.
Yeah.
That may have been how she found him in Cairhien when he was being hunted by the Trollocs.
She certainly finds him easily enough. Although I've seen speculation out there that Lanfear can track Rand because of his Taveran nature. She has some way of reading the pattern.
It does seem that she says she can find him that way, but I really do think there's some sort of finder or tracker on him from these letters.
She could easily have put a tracker on any of his metal objects, too, when she's going through his saddlebags.
Oh, totally. That's a good point. Maybe that's when she was like, we thought she was looking for the dragon banner. She may have been just putting a tracker on some of his stuff.
Putting weaves all over his stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Why didn't we think of that last time?
Because we're not that
when we
smart.
were talking about it. Matt was juggling 3 boiled eggs.
Juggle 3 non-boiled eggs? That's a challenge. Because then when you drop it, it goes splat.
No mistakes.
Yeah.
He was trying to appear nonchalant. Ingtar peered into the unlit fireplace, frowning. I thought that was very Moradin of him. Loyal had a few books from Faldara still in his pockets, and was reading one beside a lamp. Those
are the only books he has. The rest of them burned.
Yeah, he gave up his books to save Hurin. It's kind of a big deal, guys.
And then I noticed we kind of switched to Perrin's POV.
Yeah.
It's not as obvious a POV switch as I've seen in the past. Usually it's a separate, like... Do you have a paragraph break in between yours?
No, but this whole thing could have been Perrin's point of view. I mean, the second paragraph starts, Perrin slouched at the table, studying his hands clasped on the tabletop. To his nose, the room smelled of beeswax used to polish the paneling. It was him, he thought. Rand is the shadow killer. Light, what's happening to all of us? His hands tightened into fists, large and square. These hands were meant for a smith's hammer, not an axe.
I found that an ironic statement.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. Yeah, he has to pick the hammer. Even if he uses that hammer for violence, it has the potential for making things and being productive. Whereas the axe is only meant for one thing, killing.
Yeah. Much like the Aiel and their spears, how they won't use a sword, because a sword is only for one thing.
I like that parallel between Perrin's axe and the hammer and the Aiel sword and spear.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Because you can use a spear to hunt. You don't have. It's not just for hunting people, whereas a sword is only for killing people.
How is Hurin? Rand asked Varen, arranging his sword so he could sit, just falling into being a little lordling. He insisted on going out, Ingtar answered. I told him to follow the trail only until he smelled Trollocs. We can follow it from there tomorrow. Or do you want to go after them tonight? Ingtar, Rand said uneasily. I really wasn't trying to take command. I just didn't think. There are some things that interest me greatly, Rand, Varen said quietly. One is how you vanished from Ingtar's camp without a trace. Another is how you arrived in Cairhien a week before us. That clerk was very clear on that. You would had to have flown. You would have had to fly.
That's a tough sentence to say.
I don't know why that was so hard.
You would have had to fly, yeah. And then Matt drops an egg. See, they go splat. Why do you think Ingtar is just like brooding, basically? Do you think it's because like he lost the horn, or?
I don't know what's going on in Ingtar's head right now. Something is going on.
Ingtar's always been a little bit of a black box to me. I'm never exactly sure what he's thinking, but I think he's just disappointed that he lost the horn again.
Yeah.
Because again, I think he's still under orders to get it for the Dark, and I still think he's trying to get it for Ishamael.
He may be compelled to act a certain way, or even just to fixate on finding the horn. He may also be doing a little bit of inner meditation. I know I brought this up before, and you really think that it's the portal stone. When Ingtar goes through the portal stone, that's the moment when he makes up his mind. But I keep thinking that maybe there's something here going on in Ingtar's head, like a dilemma.
I do think that there's the beginning, yes.
You know, if and when he gets the horn, then what? He's got a really big decision to make.
I think after he let the Gray Man in, and the Gray Man basically shot an arrow at Rand, he's been feeling guilt over that.
Yeah.
But I do still think he's trying to get the horn for the Dark Friends at this point.
Probably.
I think he's conflicted, but I still think he's on Team Dark.
Saving Shinar has been his motivation up until at least recently.
And I still think he's trying to save Shinar by turning over the horn and sparing Shinar, making a deal, basically, to save his homeland.
Yeah. Rand doesn't mind telling the story about what happened, and he told his tale simply.
I noticed that Varen says, it shouldn't be hard to find a tall girl among the nobility of the Kyrian. She immediately picks out, like, maybe the story is bullshit.
And Rand says that I think he's straight up lying here. I'm not exactly sure. But he says that Selene brought them back through the portal stone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows it was him.
I think he understands exactly what happened.
But Varen knows.
That's been coming up a lot in this chapter.
Yeah, Varen knows. I like that a lot. I think we can pretty much always assume that Varen knows the truth of what's going on, with a few possible exceptions.
And of course, also that Rand and Loyal managed to steal the horn back, and then it was stolen again by Fane. Varen wants to find Selene. So if she can use a portal stone, she's a powerful channeler.
And the fact that she even knows the words portal stone.
Yeah. It's a good point. Or what it is.
What it is or what it does, like.
And that she used it properly without obliterating herself.
Right. Who is this girl?
Perrin smelled lamb even before Mistress Tiedra led in the procession bearing trays of food.
Do you think Varen suspects that it's Lanfear?
She may be able to have put something together at this point. She also, when she arrives at the group of Shinarans, when she first shows up, there's like a bit of hints from the way she acts and a few things that she says that she sensed someone channeling the night before when the portal stone was used.
Right.
So she knows that there was a powerful female channeler.
And the prophecy on the wall at Valdara says, daughter of night, she walks again.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to suggest that Lanfear is around pretty strongly. So I don't think it would be that impossible for Varen to put the dots together. To be like, oh, I know this is the Dragon Reborn. I know Lanfear's out because of this prophecy. And I know that Rand is suddenly has this female channeler who doesn't really seem like a Kyrian hanging out with him and doing all sorts of mysterious things in a portal world. Like, it would be really tough for her not to at least suspect.
She's got a lot of hints, and we know that she's clever. She may be putting up a front when she says, oh, she's from a Kyrianan house, right?
Yeah.
Should be easy to find then.
Uh-huh.
I think the only other thing we get about Varen in this, she just sits there and thinks about it after she says all that.
Well, we're not in her head, so we only see her from the outside, which is, of course, the ignorant boys.
And because we're seeing this from Perrin's perspective, when the meat is like 30 feet away, he's like, huh?
When the meat comes out, Perrin gets distracted.
He dreamed of red meat, not even cooked usually. It was disconcerting to find himself thinking of the nicely pink slices of lamb that the innkeeper carved were too well done. He firmly took helpings of everything, and 2 of the lamb.
Ruin good meat by cooking it. I'll tell you what. I don't know. I think I'm on his side. If I can get my burger a little bloody, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's best that way. Perrin notes that Matt still has a healthy appetite, even though he looks like he's dying.
Yeah, I mean, he's eating enough. I think, the dagger is just sucking the energy right out of him.
Yeah, or the sickness that's caused by it, or
the lack of the dagger.
Yeah.
So I think it's also the constant healing that Varen's probably doing means he's just constantly hungry.
Oh, that's a good point. Perrin kept his eyes on his plate as much as possible and wished they had never left Emond's Field.
I think this is our second mention of the travels of Jane Farstrider.
Yeah.
I wonder if Jordan tried to bring it up like once per book. And it mentions adventures among the sea folk and journeys to the lands beyond the Aiel Waste, where silk came from. That's sort of our first Shara reference.
Oh, is that our first reference to Shara?
I'm not sure if it's the first one, but it's definitely one of the early ones that references the land beyond the Aiel Waste.
It kind of tells us what's out there.
Right, and we know that that's where silk and spices come from.
Dae'mar's probably out there screwing around somewhere.
I don't think he's out there quite yet, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
And the next thing I have is Rand gets the book, but he doesn't very much feel like reading, and so he sets up a game of stones with Ingtar, and I thought this was interesting.
Perrin or Rand?
Oh, I thought it was Rand that set up the game. Is that wrong?
Yeah, it's Perrin.
The Shinaran played with a slashing, daring style. Perrin had always played doggedly, giving ground reluctantly, but he found himself placing the stones with as much recklessness as Ingtar. Most of the games ended in a draw, but he managed to win as many as Ingtar did. The Shinaran was eyeing him with a new respect by early evening, when the sniffer returned.
So I want to talk a little bit about stones and how that plays a role in the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, it definitely plays a big role in how characters assess each other in many, many situations.
It's sort of how their base strategy is. You see, when two characters interact on a strategy level, he likes to make them play off against each other. You've got Tuon and Matt, sort of going at each other at the end. Morghese and Pedron Nile do a little bit of squaring off.
Mm-hmm.
Loyal is surprisingly good at stones.
Tom and Matt play quite a bit.
Yeah, Tom's awesome at it.
Yeah.
And it does seem to have a bit of a parallel with politics and the Game of Houses. So the better you are at stones, the better you are at the Game of Houses.
Right.
And of course, Tom is the master of Game of Houses.
And stones, which I imagine looks like Go, I think that's pretty well established.
Yeah, stones and Go, I think, are the exact same game.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, it's a large checkered board that has white and black stones, and each player places one stone per turn. You just place these stones on a board, and eventually you try to outmaneuver each other. And it's a super complex game that just recently a computer was able to beat a human, like this year.
Well, it's much more complex than chess.
Yeah, there's just way more variables.
The solution space is much larger, I think.
It's really complicated.
And yet at the same time, super simple, right?
Because there's 4 rules, I think.
Yeah. There aren't 6 different pieces like there are in chess with all their different moves and how they interact. It's just...
Right, but in chess you have, especially in the opening, a limited number of moves, so there you can memorize these openings, whereas in Go your opening can be literally anything. And
not to mention just the number of spaces. On a chessboard, you're 8x8, you've got 64 possibilities.
What's a Go board? It is a lot more, right?
It's Go boards, they can be variable sizes. I know certainly...
If you want to play a short game, you can put a piece of tape on it and just use half the board or whatever.
Or when I play it on my phone, a lot of the starter games are play on a 9x9 so you can figure out the rules.
Yeah.
Right? Really simple stuff like that.
I downloaded an app a while back to teach me how to play. I never got very good at it.
I understand the rules and I understand strategy on a small scale, but big scale strategy is very difficult.
Yeah.
And there's even just a lot to the small scale stuff. And then the small scale interacts at a medium scale. It's all very convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
And it very much emulates, to me, armies taking land.
Oh, yeah. It's about taking and holding land and surrounding and cutting off your opponent.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Huron pops back in, interrupting them. They're just sort of sitting there waiting for him to come back.
Huron's grin was at the same time triumphant and perplexed. I found them, Lord Ingtar, Lord Rand. I tracked them to their lair. Lair? Ingtar said sharply. You mean they're hiding somewhere close by? Aye, Lord Ingtar. The ones who took the horn, I followed straight there, and there was a Trolloc scent all around the place, though sneaking as if they didn't dare be seen, even there, and no wonder. The sniffer took a deep breath. It's the great manor Lord Barthanas just finished building. Lord Barthanas? Ingtar exclaimed, but he's... I'll just go right into this, because this is what we were talking about earlier. And Varen cuts him off and says, There are dark friends among the high as well as the low, Varen said smoothly. The mighty give their souls to the shadow as often as the weak. Ingtar scowled as if he did not want to think of that.
Which is a dark friend telling a dark friend that there are dark friends
in
high and low places.
They're 2 dark friends having a conversation about another dark friend. What about the king? Matt demanded. If this Barthanas is a dark friend, the king will help us. I am quite sure, Varen said dryly, that Galdry and Ryaton would move against Barthanas de Madrid on the rumor that Barthanas is a dark friend, and glad of the excuse. I am also quite sure Galdrian would never let the Horn of Valir out of his grasp once he had it. He would bring it out on feast days to show the people and tell them how great and mighty Cairhien is, and no one would ever see it.
The price is too high. He would take their prize and lock it away.
Yeah. And Ingtar adds a little to that. If we tried to leave with the horn, he'd cut our honored heads off without pausing to take a breath.
And we get a glimpse of just how ruthless the king is when he kills or has Tom's girlfriend, Dae'mar, killed, just based on the game of houses.
I think it happens because he's at Barthanas' manor, right?
Yeah. It does seem that Dae'mar is killed when Tom is at the party with Rand, and Tom is seen hanging out with Rand.
Yeah.
Or it's possible while he's out, at least. I think there was that one interaction earlier.
Does he kill Dae'mar just to hurt Tom?
I think they're there to, like, search Tom's place, and, like, she was just in the way.
That makes sense. Perrin ran a hand through his hair. The more he found out about kings, the less he liked them. Varen starts talking here. What we need is some way inside Barthanas Manor's house. If only we can find the horn, we may also find a way to take it back. Yes, Matt, and the dagger. And she basically says that if she just makes her presence known, she's sure she'll receive an invite within a few days.
Well, sure, she's Aes Sedai. She can get into any party she wants.
Yeah.
But they needed one as soon as possible. And so the whole setup with Rand burning the invitations was Ta'Veren Nis trying to get him to have this invitation when he needs it.
The sniffer had been rocking anxiously on his heels from the moment she mentioned an invitation. Lord Rand already has one, from Lord Barthanas. Perrin stared at Rand, and he was not the only one. Rand pulled 2 sealed parchments from his coat pocket and handed them to the Aes Sedai without a word. Ingtar came to look wonderingly over her shoulder at the seals. Barthanas and Galtrian? Rand, how did you come by these? What have you been doing? Nothing, Rand said. I haven't done anything. They just sent them to me.
Nothing other than burning all the other invitations he's received.
And
making people incredibly curious about him. And dropping ridiculous number of crazy hints about weird, out of place manor lord stuff.
He basically did everything exactly correct while trying not to do anything at all.
Or did everything exactly wrong while trying to do nothing at all?
Yes. Maybe that makes more. Maybe that makes more sense.
I mean, but this is just. I mean, super obvious Ta'Veren effects going on to make this invitation be in his pocket at this point in time when he needs it.
Ingtar let out a long breath. Matt's mouth was hanging open. Well, they did just send them, Rand said quietly. There was a dignity to him that Perrin did not remember. Rand was looking at the Aes Sedai and the Shienoran Lord as equals. Perrin shook his head. You are fitting that coat. We're all changing. Lord Rand burned all the rest, Hurin said. Every day they came, and every day he burned them. Until these, of course. Every day, from mightier houses. He sounded proud. And Varen just says, the wheel of time weaves us all into the pattern as it wills. But sometimes it provides what we need before we know we need it. She doesn't say Ta'Veren, but she implies it.
Well, the wheel weaves as the wheel wills is a very Moraine Ta'Veren statement to make.
Yeah, I like that Varen said it slightly differently.
Uh-huh.
Casually, Varen crumples the Galdrian's invitation and throws it into the fireplace.
Yeah, I noticed it doesn't burn right away.
I think it's
because it's not a lit fire.
Where it lay white on the cold logs. Yeah.
So I was just wondering if I don't think it ever turns up again, but I was wondering if anyone could like snag it and use it for something. Doubtful, but I was wondering if somehow Tom got a hold of it and used it to assassinate the king later.
Maybe. I mean, he would have had access anyway.
He could just forge his own invitation.
How can I go? Rand asked her. They will know I'm no lord. I'm a shepherd and a farmer. Ingtar looked skeptical. I am Ingtar, I told you. Ingtar shrugged, but he still did not look convinced. Hurin stared at Rand with flat disbelief. There's no way out of this now.
No.
I mean, there never was any way out of it, but...
Bullshit.
Yeah. Right, from far to the west, yeah.
And this is, by the way, right after he's been...
That's what you keep saying.
Treating an Aes Sedai and Ingtar, a Lord of Faldara, as equals, and actually taking charge from them.
He's walking around in his fancy coat. He's got an invitation to the king's party and the king's biggest rival.
He's got Selene hanging around him.
Yeah. He's giving people orders. He's just falling right into the role.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that I might find skeptical is, why is this farmer acting all like royalty? And he's had a little bit of training from Lan on how to walk, but he also has, there's a little bit of like just genetics and inheritance and The fact that he is the king, the son of a queen and clan chief.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, the way I see it anyway, is pretty much what Varen says here. Like, she says essentially, like, listen, if you don't tell everyone that you're a poor farm boy, people will see what they expect to see. Beyond that, look them in the eye and speak firmly. The way you have been talking to me, she added dryly, and Rand's cheeks colored.
And I kind of imagine it's like when I listen to someone with a British accent. I don't know if they're from the country or the city. Like, they just have a British accent. And so I imagine that people from Cairhien are like, oh, you have an Andorran accent. I don't know if it's a country accent or like a noble accent.
Yeah, they wouldn't know.
Because she says that, like, a lot of the irregularities, they're just going to assume it's because you're...
Yeah, because you're not from here.
You're not from here.
And you have different customs from your court, whatever court you're used to being in. It will also help if you remember the way you behaved before the Amerlin. If you are that arrogant, they will believe you are a lord if you wear rags, Matt snickered. Varen tells Ingtar to leave some of his men near the gates to make sure that the horn doesn't slip out while they're there, but she seems pretty convinced that it's going to stay inside the manor. The invitation is for the following evening.
Right. Well, it's definitely not coming back out of the manor. It's also not in the manor anymore.
And he has a little freak out here. Perhaps so, Ingtar agreed grudgingly. I just do not like to wait. Now that the horn is almost in my hands, I will have it. I must. It's a weird little outburst.
That's what makes me lean towards a little bit of Ingtar compulsion from the Dark Friend Social.
Yeah.
Is this absolute... It's almost beyond redemption or desire. It's like he has a need that's been embedded into him to get the horn.
Yeah, I'm nodding. Something's happening. Even though it's the Horn of Valyr, it's this great artifact and all that, like, nobody else is acting the way he is. He's, like, a little out of line, you know?
Oh, yeah. And I think even Huron looks at him a few times.
Huron says something here.
Or Uno looks at him a few times.
Oh, is it?
They were just leaving Faldara, and Ingtar was pushing the horses too hard, and Uno looks over at Rand being like, are you going to do something about this?
Oh, right.
So I know just a couple of the soldiers have sort of noticed Ingtar's odd behavior and certainly given him odd looks or said, that's not quite right. They haven't argued with him because he's the leader, but they've been noticing.
Huron stares at Ingtar. But Lord Ingtar, that isn't the way. What happens, happens, and what is meant to be will... Ingtar's glare cut him off, though he still muttered under his breath, it isn't the way. Talking of must.
And that's why I think Ingtar can never actually get a hold of the horn.
The pattern won't let him.
Yep. That must is always going to prevent him from getting his hands on it.
Yeah. Ingtar turned back to Varen stiffly. Varen, said I, Cairhienin are very strict in their protocol. If Rand does not send a reply, Barthanes may be so insulted he will not let us in, even with that parchment in our hands. And then Varen suggests we will surprise them. Her brief smile was not pleasant. But I think Barthanes will want to see Rand in any case, dark friend or not. I doubt he has given up plots against the throne. Rand, he says you took an interest in one of the king's projects, but he doesn't say what. What does he mean?
I think as a dark friend, he'd be more interested in seeing Rand, not less.
Yeah, especially as a rival to the king.
Yeah, and I'm guessing he has Rand's face, made that connection.
Guessing what?
He's got Rand's face.
Oh.
Do you think Barthanes was at the Dark Friend Social? I mean,
if he was probably very well disguised because he's a, sharp Cairhienin.
And I imagine all the Dark Friends in this novel were at the Dark Friend Social. Maybe not totally true, but it sort of it fits.
I'm nodding for that, but I think so.
That like Liandrin, Varen, Ingtar, Barthanes, Bors, who's Jacob Carden. Do we know of any other Dark Friends in this novel? That, there's obviously a bunch of other Dark Friends around, but are any others like active in this novel?
Other important Dark Friends?
Yeah.
No one's popping into my head that you haven't said, other than the minor ones that are unnamed. And all right, Suroth.
Oh, that's right, because she takes the girls into captivity.
Oh, does she?
Suroth does, because Liandrin drops them off.
Oh, Jesus, that's coming up really soon, isn't it?
So that would make sense that Suroth would be at the Dark Friend Social, because that's where they would have gotten orders.
Yeah. But here, Rand says, it was probably the statue that Barthanas is referring to in the letter.
Oh, yes. When they're like, what was the king's project that he took an interest in?
And he asks Varen what it is, and she explains it.
And this is a good information dump about the Choden Call.
Asa Angriel, she says. Here's the part I had highlighted. One of a pair, the two largest ever made that we know of, and an odd pair as well. One, still buried on Tremelking, can only be used by a woman. This one can only be used by a man. They were made during the War of Powers, to be a weapon. But if there is anything to be thankful for in the end of that age or the breaking of the world, it is that the end came before they could be used. Together, they might well be powerful enough to break the world again, perhaps even worse than the first breaking. She seems to think that this isn't really a thing to worry about.
And she doesn't mention the key ter'angreal, but that's why I always thought they weren't a big deal. Because basically, without the ter'angreal, there's no way to connect to them. They're just going to burn you out.
And she says there are probably only, I think she mentions 5 women that she can think of who could operate one of these things. She says 3 in training, the Amerlin, Moraine, and Elida. Oh, and perhaps 1 or 2 others, she says, that are approximately as powerful. And, of course, there aren't any male channelers to worry about except for the one in the room.
Right. Well, and Logain.
Yeah.
He's obviously stilled, but...
But Varen says that Logain wouldn't be powerful enough to operate it properly.
And I'm wondering if that's without the ter'angreal, is what she's saying. That basically there is any male channeler who connected to this, even Rand al'Thor, I think, would be burned out if he connected directly to the statue.
Oh, perhaps. Or maybe you just have to be a very, very powerful channeler to operate it without an access key. Speculation.
But we know Logain is pretty much as powerful as Rand.
Yeah,
in terms of raw
very
power.
Close, I think.
He's very, very close. So that's why I imagine that no male channeler would be able to connect directly to the sangreal. It would burn anyone out.
And the amount of taint.
Well, that's a whole different issue. Yeah. That would be massive. Yeah, as Aradia is pointing out, she probably doesn't know exactly how it's being used. It's a history.
Or exactly how to use them, even.
Yeah.
She may not really understand.
Doesn't Rand learn the details about the key from Lanfear?
I believe so. I thought it was interesting that Varen says here, "No, Ingtar, I don't think you need worry. At least, not until the real Dragon Reborn proclaims himself, and then we will all have enough to worry about as it is. Let us worry now about what we shall do when we are inside Barthanas' manor." She was talking to Rand. Perrin knew it. And from the queasy look in Matt's eye, he did too. Even Loyal shifted nervously in his chair.
She until the real Dragon Reborn proclaims himself, everyone turns and stares at Rand.
He was staring at his shoes. Yeah. Oh, Light, Rand, Perrin thought. Light, don't let her use you. Rand's hands were pressing the tabletop so hard that his knuckles were white. But his voice was steady. His eyes never left the Aes Sedai. First, we have to take back the horn and the dagger, and then it is done, Varen. Then it is done. Watching Varen smile, small and mysterious, Perrin felt a chill. He did not think Rand knew half of what he thought he did. Not half.
Yeah, he knows less than that.
You know nothing, Rand al'Thor.
I think she's just smiling. He's and then it's done, and she smiles. Yeah, that's not... No, it's not even close.
Thank you to everyone that's supporting us. It's freaking awesome to watch it grow. I've been saying that this whole last 6 months or 8 months or however long we've been working on this now.
Oh, I've totally lost track.
It's too freaking cool.
So I created a new goal for us on the Patreon page. With Jordan Con coming up April 20th through the 23rd, You should go if you can. We have plans to go, and we're buying tickets to fly across the country, and we need to stay in a hotel room, and frankly, that's a big chunk of money. And, a little bit of money for booze, too, while we're there. And so, basically, I've gone ahead and just added a goal on our Patreon page, and I think some people have seen that and responded, and I just want to put that out there that, we'll be there either way, but if you guys can support us in getting there, I'd really, really appreciate that. And that might give us a chance to meet you, and certainly make it easier for us to go without worrying about finances.
Yes, please fly our poor butts to Atlanta from Oregon.
We'd really appreciate that. And there's been a bunch of people who have been helping us out, and let me read them off. Sit back, get something cold to drink, and prepare to listen to a long list of names. So folks that have helped us out: Luke Thornley.
Thank you, Luke.
Gerard Egan.
We appreciate you.
James McGrath. Britt Workman pledged. He's at the Ashaman level. Sam Taylor is at the Ashaman level. Kevin Brandenstein pledged.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm not sure if I should thank each of you individually or if that'll be obnoxious to listen to, so I'm just kind of interspersing this here.
Jose Urena.
Thanks, Jose.
Kelsey Baldwin. Charlie Visco up their pledge. John Pirine. Mike White. Justin Root. Natalie Pearson. Lauren Balu.
Oh, what's up, Lauren? We've been talking on Instagram, Facebook.
Cool. Kim Havel. Brett Ziegler. Stoff22.
What's up, Stoff?
Nathan Rena. And Tamara WJ.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Nathan. We seriously appreciate the shit out of you guys. It's so awesome.
This has been just barn burner of a couple of weeks with you guys. I've just been watching the donations roll in, and I'm having a trouble keeping up with the emails. So we're going to have to do another round of merchandise soon, just to get that out to some of the people who didn't get their buttons the first time around, and to all the new folks who have donated.
Oh, right. And our other announcement is that we made a Cafe Press page with some of our merch out there. So you can now buy a t-shirt or a pint glass or any number of other things, because Cafe Press gives us like a huge amount of possibilities. So we just used a lot of them.
Yeah, it's really easy to slap your logo on just about anything, and they print it up and ship it out to you. It's not the cheapest stuff out there, and we don't get the biggest percentage of stuff, but it is super easy and convenient for us. And I know that Cafe Press seems to at least be able to handle volume, and their quality, as far as I'm aware, is pretty good.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time. I've been aware of the site.
If you want to shop at our store, you can go to cafepress.com/WOT Spoilers Podcast.
And please do think about our plane ticket to Jordan Con while you do it.
I wonder if people can donate miles. I don't know if that's a thing.
I don't know. And I don't know if the way we have Patreon set up is that people pledge a certain amount of money and that will be automatically deducted from their account at the end of the month, basically. And I don't know if you can just give us non-repeating money. I mean, I guess you could just donate and then cancel it.
Yeah, I'd encourage people to do that. If you're interested in just helping us out,
however you want to do
Jordan
it.
Con, you'll get the buttons and the stickers, but pledge for a month and help us get there, and then you go ahead and cancel your pledge.
I feel like it's inspiring also for people who are probably also inspiring for people who listen and give a shit about the podcast to hear that it's doing well.
Sure. I mean, I don't think you can hear that list of donors and not think that we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. And that's just what did we, last time we read patrons was
like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe 3 weeks ago, but it was in February.
I checked last night. We have 2 new patrons since last night.
You guys are awesome.
Really, we endlessly appreciate you.
And we have a little bit of potential news about the show.
Oh, about the Wheel of Time TV show?
Yeah. I don't know if did you see that?
I saw a stirring, but I didn't see any. What did you find out?
Well, so, it was pretty vague, but basically there's a website called Deadline that was writing a media article, And sort of there was an offhanded remark about the shows that Amazon had, and it included The Dark Tower and The Wheel of Time. And no one's confirmed or denied it, but the fact that no one's denied it is probably a decent indication that it may, or, it's probably going to be true.
Dark Tower is awesome too. I read that series a long time ago.
Well, there was
also
that terrible
ridiculously long. Oh, there was. I didn't even know there was a movie.
My point being that I've been getting pretty excited about the TV show announcement, and frankly, just from a personal level, I think a TV show announcement is going to drive a lot of traffic to the podcast and grow the community. So I think from that perspective, I'm trying to be a little prepared for something coming out, some announcements coming out, particularly after the con.
That is very exciting either way.
I'm also hoping to, spread the good word at the con. And, I can't think of more fertile ground for people who would listen to our podcast.
Yeah. Just walk around with stickers. We'll be the guys in the parking lot with a van full of T-shirts. As I've been saying, that is not true.
No, it wouldn't be
a bootleg album out in the parking lot.
It wouldn't be a terrible idea to buy some merch and bring with us.
Buy some of our own merch.
Yeah, well, because we can buy it.
I hear what you're saying.
We can buy it at cost, and then we sell it with the markup in person.
I don't want to get kicked out of Jordan Con.
We could exchange T-shirts for cash. I have no problem doing that.
Yeah. T-shirts for donations only.
And or swearing your soul to the Dark Lord. That works too.
Yes.
Snakes and Foxes was asking about the tone of the new podcast.
Yes, I feel like I'm going to fixate on dark subjects anyway, as I know I'll be naturally more attracted to that. It's definitely, I don't know about somber, but it'll be me telling stories, speaking slowly about legends and myths. And I don't want to get to the bottom of things, but I want to explore some of these subjects and talk about what these stories have in common, things like that. I was saying before, I don't know if you guys listen to any of these, but two of my major influences on wanting to make this new project are, I'm a really big fan of The Memory Palace is one, and Lore are both cool storytelling podcasts. And it won't be, too much like those two, but they're storytelling podcasts which kind of have a very open subject. Like neither of them are about anything in particular. The guy from Lore just tells spooky stories from the past. That's it. So, that's an endless amount of content that you can, and that was kind of one of my inspirations. If I'm going to do, old-fashioned type storytelling, I might as well leave it open. So the theme is kind of the power of narrative and what that means to us as humans, how stories and narratives are, I see them as something it's an extremely important part of society. Like our personalities are stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And, another story we tell ourselves is how we relate to the world that we live in and our narrative in that world. And, society in turn tells us stories about who we are and what the meaning of our lives is. So different people at different times would have perceived these things in a totally different way because their societies told them different stories. Culture is a story. It's a story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And I just want to fuck around with that and explore it. You want to hear something really goofy? Another one of my major inspirations, something that keeps popping into my head. Who's that fucking comedian? The guy from Ron Swanson did that incredible video that blew up and went viral. I don't know, this was 2 years ago or something. It's Nick Offerman. It's 45 minutes of him on YouTube. He doesn't say a single word, and he's just sitting in a chair by a fireplace sipping a glass of whiskey for a half an hour or something. And I'm the feel of that video just blew me away. I love it. And I kind of want to be Nick Offerman. But
don't we all?
The point isn't to be funny, but the point is kind of we're going to sit down and have this talk. Maybe you kind of get what I'm saying.
I don't necessarily think you want to be the person. You want to be in the space that he's created.
Right. The feel of that. I love his style.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
He's a funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when he goes from really mean to really cute. When he goes from like, he scowls and then he giggles about it. It reminds me a little bit of the Netflix holiday.
Oh,
thing.
it's just a fireplace.
Just a fireplace. They just have like 12 hours of a fireplace burning.
Yeah.
That he just filmed and put on Netflix for those of us without an actual fireplace.
After a few minutes to let us calm down, he teases yet again by looking at his glass as if to take a sip. But he does not. Crafty Mr. Hofferman. The fireplace sound effect. I thought maybe it's possible I might use that. I don't know, though.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Like in the intro or something. Also, rain.
Rain's a good one.
Yeah.
Especially if he's a tinker.
And like in the... I get it. It took that a second. It took me a second to click. In the transcript that I'm working on, I tell this story about a winter storm.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?